Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of iWoofs. I'm here today with my dad, Dr. Ian Dunbar. How are you doing today, Dad?
I'm doing fine. I'm lost in thought at the moment, and I'll tell you why as soon as we start.
Oh, okay. We'll see. Well, today we're going to be talking about the jolly routine and how that can be helpful with dogs that have problems with dog-dog reactivity. So I don't know how many people are familiar with that term, so why don't you tell people what is the jolly routine?
Well, that's what got me lost in thought. I mean, the jolly routine, wow. Never has anyone suggested a dog training procedure that was decades before its time, and the dog training community hasn't even caught up with it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me back, and then when you said, welcome to iWoofs, I thought, wow, that goes back too.
Yeah.
And like we were talking when we were walking earlier, when was the first iWoofs? I remember it was in Phoenix, and it was audio only. And
I think it was at least a decade ago.
Oh, Jamie.
Yeah.
I think we're talking. Yeah, I'm going to check it out.
Sounds good.
Because yeah, that's amazing. Oh, we could just go to Dogstar Daily and look at the date.
I think we could probably figure it out pretty easily.
Yeah, right. Anyway, but the
jolly
routine. The jolly routine. Yeah, let's say it again. The jolly routine. This is just incredible. And I think it goes back to the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an industrial psychologist who was working in Japan, I think, and he came back home and he'd lost his job.
Mm-hmm.
So from Oregon, and he looked around sort of things, and he wasn't even involved in animals. Anyway, he got a job with a veterinarian in LA. And together they developed a thing called the RX system, which is essentially a tuning fork at 37 kilohertz. It's just a distraction. It's like a can of pebbles, so you shake it when the dog's doing something naughty, or you throw it. And it was like a non-contact distraction or interrupter or what have you. Mm-hmm. And it's very gross. It's very simplistic. People still do this stuff today. But it's not instructive, so it's relatively ineffective. Your timing has to be consistent with effective timing. So anyway, around this came a whole book, how this solved every problem.
It's a tuning fork. So you go ding and just make a sound.
You throw it and it makes a ding at 37 kilohertz, which is meant to be the optimal frequency for dogs to hear. Anyway, it came with this book. And it was a weird shaped book. It was like 4 inches by 4 inches, but 2 inches thick. So Bill Campbell wrote this book. And of course, I think maybe he knew that this little tuning fork gizmo was kind of limited in its instructiveness, and it was essentially an annoying interrupter.
Okay.
And so when he wrote the book for how this solves every problem, he always added on the jolly routine. So especially for all the social problems. Mm-hmm. So like the distance problem, no recall. Well, that's an obvious application of the jolly routine. Healing, any behavior problem, barking, and basic training. And then the temperament problems. Mm-hmm. Dogs that don't like men, dogs that don't like other people, unfamiliar people, strangers, dogs that don't like other dogs. And this was the big application of it, classical conditioning. I remember I read it back then, and I was a little disparaging about the tuning fork and the book. I mean, you can't have a gizmo that solves every dog problem, with the exception of an auto shaper. No, we have the technology now that nearly every behavior problem that you mention, the auto shaper can train the dog for you.
Yeah.
But, so what he would do is, so let's use it, no recall. So he would just say, well, essentially just, if you're in a fenced area, just wait for the dog. Most people who let their dog off leash at some point, it eventually comes back to them because they get back home with their dog. But when the dog arrives, do the jolly routine. Mm-hmm. And the jolly routine, as the name suggests, is, dance a jig, be jolly, be happy, smile, sing, tap dance,
Okay.
or jump up and down and be absolutely silly.
Be obviously and outwardly jolly.
Outwardly, totally jolly.
So someone who's looking at you is like, that person is
they,
jolly.
They think they are pretty bizarre. I don't know what they're on, but they're very
feeling
happy.
good. Yeah, feeling good.
And now my face has gone like this. I'm smiling when I look at them.
Yeah.
And I sought Bill out, so because I was giving a lot of lectures in LA at the time, and so we met. And so all of this came from industrial psychology for motivating people to buy your product, making the sell.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's pretty much similar to dog training. Selling it to the owners first. By selling it, I mean getting them to do what you want. And then once you got the owner to do what you want, then the dog will do what they want. And that's what we all want.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the first real, I think, applied psychologists in behavior, up there with the trio of the two Brelands and Bob Bailey. They were now applying high-level theoretical psychology, but changing it so it worked in practice, applied psychology. And I loved it because of who I am. And I'm essentially a very silly person, as you know. I just see the silly side of things.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh, like how that person parked their car. I mean, it might think, how could a human brain have done that and not thought there was something wrong with it, And so expressing sheer joy to the dog is the quickest way to change the dog's feelings and the feelings of other dogs around and other people and yourself.
Okay.
And I just loved it. And again, it goes back to the last few pages of my new book. I love it. I'd love to be being pushed around in a wheelchair another 3 decades on, let's say, from now. And I'd love to see someone just walking down the street and then erupt into jolliness with their dog.
Yeah.
And have the dog then do specific things like wag the butt fast. Now slow butt wag. And slow butt wag and fast and high 10. And then, I would just love to see it.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware of people around you because some dogs aren't prepared for this. It may be too much. So you may need to sit immediately, just tone it down. But so we adapted this into, it's one of the yo-yo exercises we do in training, that you've got a problem that's really disruptive, like barking. So, like in the last episode, we mentioned it. So you teach the dog to bark on cue. Why? So you can more easily and conveniently teach shush. And the way you do that is once you've taught them both how to do it on cue, lure reward training, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you yo-yo the two. So we taught jazz up, settle down, which I was sort of doing it in classes years ago, but it was actually you that gave me the idea in one year. We're moving on to 2 decades. And I did it with kids, remember, at your Derby daycare, was it?
Cedar Creek.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it was a co-op.
All right.
Where the parents had to take part, had to be down there with the teacher. And so it was my turn, I was down there, and the teacher left me in charge of, 12, 20 kids. And I was paralyzed with fear and responsibility and anger. Yeah. And I was the treasurer of the group, remember, and I brought it up to the group and said, this teacher left.
Yeah, the kids doesn't sound like best practices.
No, in charge of a parent. And you want to hear the bad news? The parent was me. Do you know what could have happened? So anyway, we taught them to be crazy. What did we call the game? The silly game. To be silly on cue. And then alternated with be a statue. Right. And then I remember there was a kid in that daycare who was he was a bit of an adolescent, even though he was only 4 or 5 years old. John was his name, and he bit.
Okay.
I remember this. And I made, so once the quickest kid to change from silly kid to a statue becomes the silly master, and they sit in the silly master's chair calling out, be silly, be a statue. So I rigged it so John became the silly master. So this uncontrollable kid is sitting like this in the silly master's chair. Like, I hadn't taught him anything. I just made him a silly master. Now he was like still and calm like all the other kids.
Right.
Anyway, so years later, I was put on the spot at a workshop in, I was double billed in a workshop. So I'm running a Canine Games workshop here and an obedience workshop over here in the big ring.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come to get me. Ian, you know, you've got 80 or so people waiting for you. And so I ran over and saying, well, what is it? What are they like? They said, well, the dogs are all out of control. They've just come for a blessing after seeing you on TV. And I was thinking, what should I do? What should I do? And I thought, I know, I'll do the silly game. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking it up as I went, we're going to do jazz up and settle down.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just put vocalization and leaving the ground on cue.
Right. So now you're talking about getting the dogs to be high energy and silly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's...
But with the jolly routine, that's really about the
owner.
The human.
The owner does it. But the way we adapted it, you've got to dance with your dog. You turn it into... Because if you do the real jolly, and I've done some really crazy stuff where you would not want to approach me if I were doing this out with my dog, just because I'm out walking my dog and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So you just think of humming, dancing, swinging your hands, doing a tap dance, but your dog's just looking on. And some dogs, like, some shepherd dogs just freeze and like, look at you doing this, It's an amazing way to get your dog's attention. It can be really, tuned down. So jolly, silly, you could go, wah, wah, wah. I guarantee you've got every dog's attention.
Uh-huh.
And if you do it again, I guarantee a lot of the dogs will sit. And it's just it's a
because
focus.
They're just confused by this new novel
They're confused,
behavior.
And then they will cock their head to one side, which has to be the cutest of gestures, which has an effect on the other owner and the other dog.
Yeah, for people who don't want to draw other humans' attention to themselves, what do you think is the most subtle way you can use the jolly routine concept of being outwardly happy for your dog to pick up on without other people,
Tony, without
being embarrassing yourself?
Without being like my dad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely rhythm.
Rhythm.
I would recommend humming. If you're good at whistling, but if you're off key, it's awful to listen to.
So kind of quietly humming and shifting your weight.
I really like, as we said the other day, the because you cannot hum that without rhythmically moving your whole body, and that's exactly what we want the dog to mirror, and the dog will get into it too. So that to me is one of the best tunes to change the owner's affect immediately and hide their anxiety and fear. We talked about this earlier on several weeks ago in this strand of podcast. But it's a gold mine. So that's to me what the jolly routine represents. Change yourself immediately. You change yourself, you change the dog. You change the two of you, you change them.
Right.
And everyone around you. It's a very, I think, powerful thing to have in your hands. And I think I want to see it on walks.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a big part of it is, even if you're not actually feeling jolly, if you act jolly, you can get your dog to think you are relaxed, and you might feel more relaxed.
Oh yeah, the whole James Lang theory of emotion is, if you enact an emotion, do you feel it? Well, we all know, and I do this every day in the bathroom mirror, but now prior to that, I do something a little early. I say thank you when I wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you saw me this morning. The overcast, and I'd woken up, and I made the mistake of enjoying my new way of waking up, thanks to you, with my morning light sun. I have a sun that rises in my room and
You have an
increases
alarm
in
clock.
light.
That's a lamp that gets lighter.
Yeah, and then the birds start tweeting.
Yeah.
I love it. And I was actually slow, relaxed. I was smiling, and I fell back asleep again. That was the problem. It's too relaxing now. So what I've done now is I've set my original alarm, It's Magic, to come on 10 minutes after when I should be out of bed. Mm-hmm. So if I do drip back, because it was a very relaxing way of waking up, but then I go into the bathroom and I look in the mirror, and it is pretty ugly in the morning, and I just smile, and I can't help myself. Yeah, I smile, and I just instantly feel better. Yeah. And so then, a lot of actors do this. You have to pretend you're crying, but you have to create real tears. When you do, you feel sad. So we know that from ourselves and our feelings. Yeah. So one would assume other people feel likewise. And one might want to generalize that animals too. Mm-hmm. If we put wag your tail on cue, maybe it makes our dog feel better. Yeah. And in science, on the one hand, I'm extremely objective and no, show us the facts, ma'am. Show me the numbers, look at the data. At other times, I like popular scientists who have many different disciplines, like Stephen Jay Gould, people of that ilk, or the astronomer
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
deGrasse Tyson, and people who now can talk popularly by taking their ruthless view of science, right, and now generalizing what then makes sense for something outside of the field. So I would assume absolutely, you ask a dog to shake, high five, and wag his tail, your dog feels better in here. There's, I would say with a 99% certainty. Yeah. Although we don't have proof of it. And you know what? I wouldn't want the proof of, we're going to put the dog through an MRI and have micro needles in its skull, sucking out and assaying the level of dopamine and all this. No. Give them the scalpel, they would dissect a kiss. Mm-hmm. E. Cummings, I think, said that. And can't you just accept the fact that Ian said, have your dog say shake, high five, or lift his roll on his back to get a chest scratch, and he raises his leg up like that, and wag his tail, and it makes him feel better. I would say I'm almost certain on that one. Yeah. Because we aren't that far removed from being an animal.
We are.
We are animals. We're not removed at all, and so certain mammalian similarities. Anyway, it's extremely powerful, the whole principle, and it's still, Bill came up with this in the late 70s, I'm pretty certain. Yeah. And you still don't see trainers doing it, and that's what would really make my day. Years ago, when I had my English TV program, I would get recognized a lot in like train stations and stuff, and it was fun, but I wanted a little privacy at times, so I thought, I'm going to go to this out of the way pub. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's on a cliff, and no one will know me there. Because I've never been there before. As I walked into the pub, a guy was sitting on a bench like this, and his Labrador was lying down in front of him, and he just looked up like this, and he went, Rover, sit down. Sit, stand. I kid you not. And then I walked in, and the barman looks up and says, your money's not welcome here, Dr. Dunbar. And in the middle of nowhere. I want to have the same thing of being pushed in a wheelchair somewhere or walking, and I see someone on the street do a jolly routine with their dog. Yeah. And that's when I think I have accomplished my mission, should you accept, Dr. Dunbar, on planet Earth. Yeah. No, we have to do it.
We've got to make it happen. Clearly, we know what you want. We might have to orchestrate this.
It's the big call at the end of the book, and our new which we haven't mentioned here, our new, free books program that we're putting oxygen into now and resurrecting after 2 decades. And we have to change people's attitudes. Just as now people get a puppy, they think of puppy classes. That never happened. We have to create that, but we now, I think, have the ability to do it through this. Mm-hmm. We can get people to share whatever we put on this podcast, and if it's interesting enough, and I think when we talk about what we're trying to do, that we're trying to change dog owners so they change dog professions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what we've got to do is show people, too. So we'll have to do some videos where we show the Jolly routine, both the full Monty version.
You aren't ready for this, Jamie.
But also, I'm very excited about, I think a lot of people will appreciate the more toned down Jolly routine, where you quietly hum the Seven Dwarfs song and do a little subtle dance. Movement. And, you don't have to make a whole big thing of it. Because I think you've also pointed out that sometimes your dogs will attune to little and quiet movements.
Sophisticated. They are the masters of it.
Right.
A twitch. A great thing to do would be to train a dog to identify ticks.
Mm.
Now, of course, we could put this into a military program or police program to know that's where the research would get done, to know if the person's lying. But imagine someone pretending they're blind and they come in with their seeing eye dog in to play poker, and the dog just paws them, says he's lying. They could read them like a book.
Lie detector dogs.
Lie detector dogs.
All right.
I think it'd be hilarious.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Dad, for telling us about the Jolly routine today.
Been fun, Jamie.
I really hope that we can make your dream come true and you can see someone walking down the street someday and bust out the Jolly routine.
With that respect, hope is not a factor. It's going to happen.
Okay.
You have unleashed a beast now. And technology has caught up with what we want to do.
All right.
So we can get the word out there, and it will happen with a vengeance.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you next time.
Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to learn more about dog training and behavior, make sure you visit DunbarAcademy.com to check out our selection of courses, many of which are completely free. If you'd rather watch more of our videos here on YouTube, just click the links to the right. And if you want to follow us on social media, everything you need is directly below. As always, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell for notifications.